Welcome back once again to Clear Skies Retirement with Jay Kirkwood at Secure Financial Management. This is a show where we talk about what's after the 401k. When you go into your retirement years, how do you get paid? What's going on there? What are we going to do about Social Security and Medicare and taxes, and how do we make our 401k work? All of that is what we talk about here on the show, getting you ready. And who are you getting to help you? And that's why we introduce you to Jay. Jay Kirkwood is here. How are you doing today, Jay?
I'm really good, Randy. What's new with you?
Well, let's talk a little bit about what's going on right now, because I think that as we have a new administration coming in, Donald Trump is president once again, and there's a lot of different ideas about taxes and about money and about regulation and all of that. And one of the things that I found interesting was all the things that Trump wants to do. He actually said the other day, why don't we put it all together in one beautiful bill? I was like, good luck with that, buddy.
Wow.
I don't know how you're going to get that through. But everything that he wants to do, they say could increase our deficit by $10 trillion. So he's all about cutting taxes, but that's our revenue in this country. So we'll see how this all turns out. I have somebody here from CNBC. Her name is Liz Pancotti, and she's from the Roosevelt Institute. And here's what she has to say about that.
I think we have a really fragile economy, one that looks okay on paper, but the minute you lift up the hood, it's not great. Trump has proposed $10 trillion in tax changes on the campaign trail between making the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act permanent and, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. $10 trillion is not something you can recover from a debt and deficit standpoint and from an inflationary perspective.
All right. So he's a guy who's talked all about let's cut taxes, no taxes on Social Security. She went through all of that.
Right.
We pay a lot of attention to tax planning in financial planning, in retirement planning. So talk to me a little bit about that. Do you see our country going toward higher taxes, even though we have a president now that's all about lower taxes? Is there any way out of this? Even the programs that he is suggesting and the tax cuts he is suggesting might add to our deficit and later on might add to higher taxes. Talk to me about what people are saying about that.
Yeah. So the problem with this, right, is that someone said it would add 10 trillion to the deficit, which would be horrendous. I mean, there's no other way to say it, right? We're at 35, I think, now. So we go to 45. Not good. Not a good move. I agree.
Yeah.
The argument that's made on the other side is that it would pay for itself through growth in the economy, right? Because of the more growth, the more revenue, the more taxes. The truth is, no one really knows how it's going to wash out, right? Because it all depends on what the outcome is. However, the deficit is a real problem. And on the surface, at least, one side makes the argument that we don't have a spending problem. We're not taxing enough. We shouldn't have to curtail our spending, just tax more. The other side says we have a spending problem, not a tax problem. If you look at the situation the country's in, and what people don't talk about a lot is not just current, but future obligations from Medicare, Social Security. It's hard to see how any one of those by themselves would actually resolve the problem. It seems that there needs to be a cut in spending and more revenue, and for the country, revenue is taxation, right? That's
right.
How the country makes money. Because at the moment, and look, I might be slightly off on these figures. That's really not the point, right? The point is I'm trying to paint a picture here is we hear all these words like, oh, there was, the deficit was 2 trillion and the national debt's 35 trillion. These numbers are so big. I think a lot of people just blank out, it's hard to understand what that amount of money is, right? So let's take it down as though the country was a household. Okay? It looks something like this. The household makes $40,000 a year.
Okay.
It spends $60,000 a year, and it has a credit card debt of about $350,000.
Oof. That's not a good balance sheet.
Right. If a lender looked at that person, they would laugh them out of the office, right? Just out you go. See you later.
Yep.
And I think painting that picture for people, that's very identifiable now, right? They can kind of put themselves in that place or somebody they know in that place. The thing that's started to become difficult now is Yes, the deficit has gone up, or the national debt has gone up a lot in the last 4 or 5 years with the COVID spending and everything like that. But when interest rates were almost zero, it was somewhat manageable, right? Because you're just paying the interest. Well, now you're paying 4 or 5%, a little bit different. Now you've got a significant interest payment you've got to make on that. So, it's got to be addressed at some point.
I think the interest that we pay on the debt is $3 billion a day.
Yeah, it's just, okay, but even that, you see $3 billion. Oh well, it's another couple billion.
Yeah. What is it? Clinton used to say $1 billion here, $1 billion there. Pretty soon you're talking about real money. It's hard to even fathom that kind of thing.
Right.
When we go into retirement, we're looking at 20 or 25 years. Do you think that we're not going to have a tax increase in 20 or 25 years? Probably that's probably not going to happen. We're going to see taxes go up. That's going to affect your retirement. If you have money in a 401k, and you want to take money out to enjoy it, it's going to be at the tax rate at that time when you pull that money out. And we have to have a tax plan. That's got to be a part of our retirement planning. And it certainly is here at Secure Financial Management. We're going to go through what we call a Get Me to Retirement 5-step process. And part of that conversation is certainly going to be, what are we going to do about taxes in your retirement? Does that include moving money from an IRA or a 401k over to a Roth systematically and getting you out of the tax wash? What does that include? Let's talk through it. 210-985-6200 is our number. 210-985-6200 or our website, retire210.com. All right, so here's my story of the day. Two guys are sitting in a bar talking about football. One says to the other, "Hey, how are we going to beat these guys this week?" And the other says, "Okay, if we don't fumble, no interceptions, no penalties, no injuries, no missed field goals, no dropped balls, I think we can do it." And the other guy says, "So if everything goes perfectly, we can win this game." And he goes, "Exactly." So you have said on many occasions, as you build a retirement plan, at the end of that, you say, guess what? It probably won't go this way.
Yeah, well, that's right.
Talk to me a little bit about that. What's the reaction when people say, well, if it doesn't go that way, what are we going to do?
Yeah. So it's how aggressive or how conservative have you been in your planning? I've talked on the show several times about a guy that I reviewed the plan for him. And we're going through it, and it didn't look right to me. And finally, I got out of him that he was using a 15% return
right
every year for the rest of his retirement to make this plan work, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe he was one of the guys having that conversation in the bar because he's an optimist that everything's going to go right all the time, right? And you're right. When we get to the end of our plan and we're looking at kind of the next 25, 30 years and we're presenting to the client, one of the things I say to them is, what I can promise you, and I can't promise you much, but what I can promise you is it is not going to unfold exactly the way that we've presented it here, because things are going to happen that we can't plan for. However, if you are planning for things, assume things aren't going to be great, right? Assume you're not going to get a great return on your investment. Assume there's going to be persistent inflation. Assume you're going to live to 95, because that's what we plan for, right? We plan to 95. I've got bad news for everybody, and I say this to everybody in the office. Look, chances are you're not making it to 95, right? Mm-hmm. Just that's a stretch for anybody. However, we've planned for it in case. And isn't it better to plan for that and then be able to have the conversation 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is from now, and say, hey, our planning was deliberately conservative. Things are better than we planned for. We've got a surplus. We've got extra money. You can take a $20,000 distribution and go on that trip you've always wanted to go on, rather than have the discussion of, well, we were pretty optimistic and now you're 75 and it didn't really work out. So now you got to go back to work. I don't ever want to be having that discussion with a client.
So imagine somebody who retired 5 years ago. That's not that long ago, but they planned for 2 or 3% inflation, and then it went up to 9%. And now what? That's a perfect example right there of a conversation that might not have taken place. And now that retiree is back in their office saying, I need another $1,500 a month because of the price of things, because we didn't talk about this. So when I talk to people about, what should I ask when I sit down with a retirement planner, with a financial advisor, I said, start every question with what if? What if the market goes down? What if taxes go up? What if they cut back Social Security? What if inflation goes up to 9% again? I mean, if you start your conversations there, I think that if you've got the plan and say, if we've got the what ifs handled, I kind of like walking out of that office feeling that, what's the worst possible scenario?
Right.
Right. I think that's probably a good way to approach it, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. At least that's the approach that we take. Look, the truth is every now and again we get somebody who they just can't retire, at least not at the lifestyle that they want. And they say, well, 95 is ridiculous. And like, yeah, okay, all right. Then what's the right number? Well, 75. I was like, oh, like that might be a little bit too on the short side, right? But they're so desperate to be able to retire that it's like, where are all these levers we can pull to make the picture look better? And what I always tell them is like, hey, I can make this look as good as you want. Whether it's realistic or not is another question, right?
Right.
Because it'll happen sometimes. Like, hey, I talked to the guy down the road, and he showed me a much better picture than this, and I think I might go with him. It's like, okay, if you want to go with him, as you wish, you should do what you think is the best thing for you. However, do you know the metrics that are being used in this plan? Or is it something that's very pretty being presented to you because they just want to get your money in the door?
Yeah.
That might be the answer. And we just don't operate that way.
You're listening to Clear Skies Retirement with Jay Kirkwood at Secure Financial Management. If you want to get a realistic look at what you've done so far to get ready for retirement and what that means for you in the future, and, not pie in the sky kind of thing, I'm going to make 8%, 10%, 15% per year. Let's be realistic about things. And wouldn't you want to know if the worst possible scenario, if things just all go to heck, then you're going to be okay. That's kind of the meeting that we all want to have. Give us a look on our website, which is retire210.com. Scroll down, you'll see our Get Me to Retirement 5-step process. You go through that and say, you know what? I'd kind of like to have that conversation. I'd kind of like to know, what my 401k will mean for me as far as income in retirement. What do I do about Social Security? All of that is included in our meetings. Retire210.com is the website, or you can call us right now, 210-985-6200. 210-985-6200. Get a date on a calendar, and let's talk through it. Well, we all know about Fidelity. We know about Vanguard. We know those names. There might be another name you don't know, but they got a lot of money. BlackRock is a financial management firm. They handle over $11 trillion of people's money. Their guy who's in charge, Larry Fink, just recently said, people are increasingly turning to the markets to finance their retirements. Now, that's not an outrageous statement. Many of us have 401ks, and that money is, for the most part, in the market. But the question is, how much? When you get into retirement, how much? If we talk about percentages, you might have been 90-10 or 100% in the market in your earlier years. And now they talk about 60-40 portfolios, 50-50s, 40-60s, all that kind of thing. Jay, is there a place where you find that people kind of land, which is their comfort spot for risk in retirement, or is it just different for everybody?
Yeah, it's really different for everybody. We have people that come in and they say, I cannot live a peaceful retirement if I have volatility in my investments, right? I can't sleep, right? You get other people that it's like nothing to them. Like they're used to it. They're happy to invest. And it depends on their own risk tolerance, but it also depends on their situation, right? So a discussion we had recently around this with a lady, she's single, and I said to her, and I don't want to hit on a nerve here. If I am, that's not my intent. I just need to have a very kind of frank discussion with you. I said, you're single, right? For some people that really bothers them. Some people it doesn't, right? She was like, yeah, I don't care. I'm happy to be single, actually. And I was like, hey, I think a lot of people can identify with that. Don't worry. And I said, if you were married, the risk we could look at in your portfolio is different just for a couple of reasons, right? At a minimum, we've got another Social Security coming in. right? So we've got two streams of guaranteed income coming in from Social Security. Maybe a potential spouse would have another 401k or pension or something, maybe. But we've got more to work with. I said, we have to make sure that you are protected and taken care of with what you have, because we don't have anybody else to back up, right? That's going to play a role in the risk that someone is willing to take as well. Is are they married? Are they single? What's their experience investing? How much income are they expecting? What's the life expectancy we're planning for? Many things.
So when you have that discussion, I think, I just said those percentages, 50-50, 60-40,
Right.
40, what all of that. Sometimes that doesn't register with people as far as risk is concerned. Sometimes when you look at somebody and say, are you okay with losing 20%? And they go, yeah, sure, no problem. But then you look at them and put a number with it and
that's
say,
the key.
if you lost $248,000, how would you feel today? The reaction is never good.
Well, that's exactly it. So when we're doing the risk side of things and we say kind of, if you had these two investment options and these are the potential ups and downs and guarantees, we don't use percentages. We use whole numbers, because that's exactly the example I was going to give, is what you mentioned, is it's very easy for somebody to say, oh, yeah, if my portfolio went down 20, 30%, like I'd be okay. I wouldn't want to sell, I'd stick it out. And I said, all right, well, we've got $1 million here. So if it went down, let's split the difference, 20, 30%, 25%, that's $250,000. That's $250,000. Would you be okay? And it's like, well, wait a second, that's not 25%. I'm like, yep, it is 25%. Okay. And that's why whole numbers, real numbers, is an important thing to use.
It just got real. And that's the kind of conversation I want to have when I sit down at the retirement table and say, okay, how much money do I want in that market? I mean, people come to me, they say, you do that show with Jay. Where should I put my money? And I say, go talk to Jay. Because, we want to make sure that we've got growth. We want to make sure that we have protection. We want to make sure we have income. How do we find the balance of all three? There's your meeting. There is your meeting right there. Give us a call. Give us a look on our website. We'll go through that Get Me to Retirement 5-step process. 210-985-6200. Again, 210-985-6200. Or use our website, retire210.com. Scroll down. You'll see the 5-step process, and then there's a place for you to put your name and information in there, and our team will get in touch with you. All right, so Jay touched on this just a moment ago when he talked about living to 95, and people go, I'll never live to 95. Well, there's an interesting comedian. His name is Zoltan Kazis. And Zoltan decided he wanted to talk to his retirement planner, his financial advisor. And that's the conversation they got into. And here's how that unfolded.
He goes, well, when are you going to retire? And I'm like, I don't know. What are people saying? And he goes, well, a lot of people now are saying 68. And I'm like, all right, put me down for 68. And then he goes, all right, now how long do you need this retirement money to last you? And I'm like, are you asking me when I'm going to die? I don't know. And he goes, well, a lot of people are saying that they need this money for 15 years after 68. And I'm like, well, what happens if I live 16 years? And that's right, I think he got annoyed because he cut me off. He goes, look, do you want it or not? So I'm retiring at 68, and I need to be dead 15 years after that. If I live beyond that, you guys are going to be seeing some GoFundMes going on.
Yes, it is the unanswerable question, but it's the question that we have to deal with. You're
right.
planning, and you're planning hopefully for a long life, but maybe that life goes longer. So talk to me, how do you talk about that, and what goes into that? Do you say, okay, how long did mom and dad live? How long did grandma live? And they get a baseline there, or how does it work?
Yeah, I'm not sure how relevant the parent side of it is, but what else do we have to go on? Right. What's the longevity like in your parents and grandparents? It's funny he says that, because we do have a bit of a similar conversation when we're presenting the plan. If we've got a couple and say there's a 5-year age difference in the couple, well, the numbers start to change after that older spouse turns 95 because their Social Security goes offline, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And very often someone will be like, well, kind of like, what's going on here? I said, well, John, that's when your plan ends. And he's like, oh, okay.
All right.
So yeah, it's kind of a funny discussion to have, but the truth is none of us know how long we've got, right? What we do, and I realize that maybe it's definitely conservative. Is it a little bit too conservative? Maybe. We plan to 95 because the chances of you getting to 95 are pretty slim. Right? Could we use 90 and it'd still be fine? Probably, right? We just use 95 because we're overly cautious with that sort of stuff. What I think is far more scary, it's what he said. So what, 68 and 15, I guess that makes him 83, right? Is when he needs to die by, right? I think he mentioned there, well, like, what if I live to 84? Then what happens, right? That's a scary thing to be addressing at 84. And I've got a real life example of this. I had a couple that retired with us a long time ago. They must have been retired for 10 years by now, I would say. Really fun people. And we did the planning and, we do our 95 typical longevity planning. And they're very honest about the whole thing. Like, they smoke, they're overweight, they don't have a healthy life. And they said, look, there's no way we're making it to 95. Like, we don't want to plan to that. I said, okay, well, what do you want to plan to? And she said 75.
Oh, my goodness.
And I said, hey, like, I understand 95 is a bit on the high end, but, 75 is pretty low for life expectancy. She said, nah, that'll be fine. All right, fine, whatever, we'll do it. You're the boss. Well, they've been retired for 10 years now. And 75's creeping up closer and closer, a lot closer than it used to be. And about a year ago, we had a meeting and she said, I know we only planned to 75 and now I'm a bit worried about that. And so we reviewed it and investments have done better than expected. Distributions haven't been so there's more time there. But that was something that was very present on her mind is I remember, because she's like, you made a pretty big deal about it. we were putting the life expectancy down to 75. And she said, now we actually are kind of worried about it. So she was relieved. I mean, they're not getting out to 95, but I think it's till 80 or 81 or something now. So much better.
Yeah.
But that's a scary thing to have to worry about at that age.
It really is. And to plan way before that, before you get to 85, when you plan for 85, is probably the time to address that. So again, the what if questions. I'm not going to live till 90 or 95. Well, what if you do? What if? Let's sit down and have the what if questions about your retirement. And that's what it is, to have a serious conversation about your retirement and go through the nuts and bolts and start to put pen to paper. Let's do the math on your retirement. Give us a call. We'll do that at no charge. Here's our number, 210-985-6200. 210-985-6200 or retire210.com is our website. Scroll down to the bottom of the page. You'll see the retirement 5-step process, and you'll also see a place where you can put your name and some information in there, and our team will reach out to you, and we'll get a date on a calendar and talk through it. Again, 210-985-6200 or retire210.com. And if you've enjoyed this podcast and you want to hear more, hit that follow or subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform. And again, thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time here on Clear Skies Retirement.
Investment advisory services offered through investment advisory representatives at Secure Financial Management, a registered investment advisor. Exposure to ideas and financial vehicles discussed are not designed nor intended to be applicable to any person's individual circumstances. It should not be considered as investment advice, nor does it constitute a recommendation that anyone engage in or refrain from a particular course of action. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Investments can fluctuate, and when redeemed may be worth more or less than when originally invested. Financial professionals are not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if Secure Financial Management is licensed in your state, please contact their office. Secure Financial Management is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency. Annuity guarantees rely solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing insurance company. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through Wholesalers Insurance. Jamin J. Kirkwood, Texas Insurance License number 1421850.